This video also goes with 15.1 out of the Musser book, and it talks about the midpoint formula. So you'll see, using GeoGebra, I created a line between these 2 points, and then I drew in dotted lines just to show what the vertical drop down would look like and then what the horizontal would look like. And the reason I did that was because we want to figure out what the middle of these 2 sides are going to be, because they are going to map up and become the middle of the line that's in question. So the question is, how do I figure out what the middle of this line is going to be? Well, I have a few options. Because this is on a grid, I could just simply count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I know that halfway between 6 is 3, so then count over 1, 2, 3, and I can figure out what the midpoint is. And I can do the same thing on this side. The problem is that that's not using coordinates. So if we're going to use coordinates, we need to take a look at the placements of the points. So if I label the first point, this is the point 4, 3. And if I label this point, this is the point 10, 7. And then if I label this point, that's the point 10, 3. So what I'm looking for is the exact ordered pair that is going to fall at the midpoint of this line segment. So I can see that because I'm going horizontally, my y values did not change. They are both 3. And so I'm looking for how to get from 4 to 10. Well, I have 2 choices. I could do 10 minus 4 is 6, and then half of 6 is 3, and then just count up again. But that's not going to give me the ordered pair unless I then physically add it to the 4. So there's got to be a better way. If we start counting from 0 instead, we can say that, okay, from 0 to 4 is a distance of 4. From 0 to 10 is a distance of 10. I want to know what the average is. What's going to fall in between these 2 points, or these 2 values? So if I do 4 plus 10, I'm going to get 14, and then half of 14 will give me 7. And look at that, the midpoint would be right at 7 if I drop that down. We can use GeoGebra to actually give us that point. So that'll plot that point, and then if I actually label it, you'll see that it is the 0.73. Now I can similarly do the same thing going in the y direction. The y direction, the x does not change, so notice that the x remains 10. So it's the difference between 7 and 3. Now I could either physically do 7 minus 3, okay, so I get the difference, this distance would be 4, and then half of 4 is 2, and I can just count either up or down. But again, that's not really using the coordinates. So what I can do is say, okay, if I start from 0, 0 to 3 is the distance up to that value, and then 0 to 7 is the distance to that value. And if I take the average of those 2, 3 plus 7 is going to be 10, and then half of 10 is 5, and look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the midpoint of this should be 5. And we can get GeoGebra to do that for us as well. So if I want GeoGebra to give us the midpoint, right? It plots the midpoint, and then if I want it to label that midpoint, I can see that I do in fact get the point 10, 5. So the question is, what is the value of this midpoint going to be? Well, if this x value is 7, and this y value is 5, then this should be the 0.75. So let's see. Let's do the same exact thing and get GeoGebra to give us that value. So there's the midpoint, and if I ask it to show me the value, it is in fact the 0.75. So the question is, how do I now put that into a formula? So let's take a look at what we did mathematically. What we had said was we wanted to know what the midpoint was. So it was find the midpoint of the segment connecting 4, 3, and 10, 7. So what we wound up doing was saying, all right, let's look at the average between the two x values. So we did 10 plus 4 divided by 2. And then let's look at the average of the two y values, which would be 3 plus 7 divided by 2. And let's see what ordered pair that gives us. So this is going to be 14 over 2 and 10 over 2. And if I simplify those, it's going to be 7, 5. And so my x value was 7 and my y value was 5, making the coordinate the midpoint. So that tells us that the midpoint formula will always be x1 plus x2 divided by 2, or in other words, the average of the x's, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, or in other words, the average of the y's.